This week, we're going to be covering Kentucky's political news and media with an eye towards November 8th. November 8th, people, critical election day across our Commonwealth. We have got a new co-host joining us tonight, Jeni Ward with Kentucky 120 United. Very excited to have her with us. Doug is going to weigh in on Amendment 1, a little bit below the radar compared to Amendment 2, but just as in line with the GOP supermajority in Frankfurt's ideas about how far their power should extend. We're going to check in with Kelsey Hayes Coots, the field director for Protect Kentucky Access, and we're going to cover the sad saga of Senate District 12. We're going to hear from the Democratic candidate who nearly won it in 2018, Paula Setser-Kissick, was happy to try again this year until the GOP drew her out of the district. And we're going to hear from the candidate who jumped in without as much takeoff time, Bill O'Brien. They're going to close with a call to action and all that important content in just about an hour is the vision there. But if you remember last week, we went a little long, so we're going to try to manage ourselves a little bit better this time. But before we do that, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? Team, I'm not kidding around. 13 days from now, voters across Kentucky are going to pick between Rand Paul and Charles Booker, doing a roadblock to progress and an agent of hope and change. We'll pick whether or not 9-year-old rape victims will have to give birth. We're going to decide what type of state house will be in Frankfurt to work with or against Governor Andy Beshear. These are very big decisions, and we need your voice and we need your vote. If you want a Commonwealth that works for all of us, please join Progress Kentucky. Make a donation to our efforts to turn our Commonwealth purple. In the next 33 days, we'd like to go bigger on social media, launch a text campaign to engage voters, make sure folks have the information they need to make it to the polls and help protect our democracy. You can help by heading to our Act Blue account and kicking in a donation of any size, 5, 10, 50. Every $100 donation will get you a Progress Kentucky hat or a Patriotic Millionaires book. Your call. Just head to that secure Act Blue account and make a donation. All right, so let's get into it. Checking in with our co-host. Who are you? Where are you? What does your protest sign say today? So, and if you're watching on the internet, you can go ahead and add your sign. What's your protest sign say? You can put it in the chat and we can put it on the screen. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, a community right there on the growth boundary in Lexington. And my sign says, the last person who should be in your OBGYN office with you is a Frankfurt politician. Doug, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Doug Price coming to you from Cynthiana, Harrison County. I'm not going to talk about what a great chamber we have because Aaron always fusses at me about that. But I will say our hospital, Harrison Memorial Hospital, has the nicest employees of any hospital. I'm going to hold my sign up. It says, vote no on Amendments 1 and 2 and vote for progressive candidates.
Excellent. Fuss at you, is that the right word? I guess I do. I just feel like the work you do for the Chamber of Commerce of Harrison County should be compensated. Surely the work you do for us will never be compensated. It's an all volunteer crew here, but they got the money. They're the Chamber of Commerce. All right, let's check in with our special guest co-host, Jeni Ward.
Hi, I'm over here in Gardenside in Lexington, and I have a lot of protest actual signs in my basement I could probably go get. But yeah, I think it would probably just be like, my goodness, like another protest. Here we are yet again. Is it Tuesday? But yeah.
What's today's protest?
Exactly.
We've all been there. I know it gets tiring, right? It gets tiring fighting for progressive values in Kentucky. I'm just going to go ahead and admit it. But I will say it to you, all of you, 13 days, right? We can do anything for 13 days.
Sure.
And I hope that everyone here is committed to doing as much as they can for the next 13 days. Balancing all other life commitments. So we are excited to hear from a few folks who are absolutely all in for the next 13 days. So again, we're going to hear from Kelsey Hayes Coots with Protect Kentucky Access. We're going to hear from Paula Setser-Kissick, who of course has been helping on a lot of campaigns, or at least I know one campaign very seriously, sadly not hers, and then Bill O'Brien. So we're running for the Senate District 12. So really good show. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Doug, I think you've got the first story for us from News of the Week.
Yes. I don't know about you all, but I just happened to get emails from Republican representatives, and man, they're coming out of the woodwork in support of giving themselves more power and more money through Amendment 1. I want to talk a little bit about money first. Legislators are part-time, right? In 2020, Senate President Robert Stivers made $97,912, and Speaker of the House David Osborne made $85,685. The more they meet, the more they make. Legislators took home an average of $65,000. Here are some details on the amendment. Presently, only the governor can call the state's legislature into a special session. The governor would, under the bill, the governor would retain the exclusive authority to call a special session for unlimited days, but the Speaker of the House and the Senate President would be able to convene the General Assembly for shorter sessions up to 12 days per year. Those days don't have to be consecutive either. The legislature would have more control over its schedule by lifting what is known as sine die, the deadlines for state lawmakers to finish each regular annual session. In odd number years, the General Assembly must conclude by March 30th, and in even years, they must conclude by April 15th. Under Amendment 1, the deadlines of March 30, April 15 would no longer exist, although legislative sessions would still be limited to 30 and 60 days. As I understand, it means that the legislature can choose to extend a session by extending no more than 12 days, but they could stop the session on March 30th, convene again on July 15th, meet a couple days, and continue to meet and pass laws whenever the 3/5 of the body agrees. I'm going to highlight some comments from a couple of legislators, Jimmy Higdon and Philip Wheeler. Higdon stated on an email, no state or federal government branch is more in lockstep with the needs and desires of the public than our legislative branch, and members proportionally represent residents of their districts. This, in my opinion, is an overly broad statement that steps all over the other two co-equal branches of government. Why is the executive, specifically the CEO of the Commonwealth, discounted, or for that matter, the judiciary? Yes, that is what you and many others claim when enacting legislation. I continue to point out that in many cases, legislators are not elected by most of the people eligible to vote. How much can I or any other constituent influence legislation when faced with the fact that legislators listen to lobbyists as opposed to the common man? Just this past year, lobbyists were paid a record amount to lobby legislators, over $11 million. Are companies who pay these sums getting bang for their bucks? Of course they are. Otherwise, they would not spend exorbitant amount of money working legislators. Another comment he made was throughout the remainder of the year, lawmakers cannot take any legislative action. This is coming from the party that continually telling us that we need less governmental control, right? Additionally, legislators meet throughout the year, so it's not like the governor sends them home where they wait for the next session. One of his other comments stated that the legislation passed the General Assembly during the 2021 session by significant bipartisan margins. In 2021, there were 105 Republican members of the legislature and 33 Democrats. The measure passed 109 for and 29 against. Hardly significant bipartisan margins. And he also said it was a minor amendment. In my opinion, this amendment is a slap in the face of the co-equal executive branch. I predict that next the legislative branch will take on the judicial branch, either by electing conservative Republicans, or if the judiciary strikes down a law, then what the heck, call a special session to change the law. Comments from Philip Wheeler. He said he was in favor of a part-time legislature since I feel it keeps Kentucky's legislators close to the people and prevents the emergence of a professional political class beholden only to lobbyists and big business. I just happened to check the Kentucky Register of Election and Finance, and over the last 6 years, Senator Wheeler has accepted contributions from the Senate Republican Caucus Committee PAC, $128,000 total, $6,000 each from the Bluegrass Committee PAC and the Go PAC Election Fund, $4,000 from the Marathon Petrol PAC, $2,000 each from the following PACs: United Parcel Services, Kentucky Hospital Association, Foss Brown Todd, Alliance Co., the RAND PAC, and a cool $21,000 from the Republican Party of Kentucky. Legislators will have more time to do more harm, and with a 60% vote, extend an ending date, potentially due to wanting to leave time for an override veto. Longtime listeners of Kernels of Truth may remember Ethan Branscombe. He was on our COT last year talking about his effort to name pets rescued from shelters or rescues as the new official state pet. Maybe they can work on this with the new days. And one last thought. If the amendment is approved and the legislature does extend, then perhaps they will have enough time to get Democratic sponsored bills out of the Committee on Committees. That's my report.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I think Andy called this Governor Beshear, rather. Andy, because we just hang out a lot, I think he called it a naked power grab, right? I think that's, I think that the too long didn't read version of your report is this is an absolute power grab, which if anyone was paying attention to the legislature, which I know is it's an unsavory thing to do. It's unfair of us to ask you to pay attention to what they do in Frankfurt because it's just not inspiring, right? But that's very much in keeping with what they do, right? They try to peel away as much of the governor's power as humanly possible, as legislatively possible. And the one thing that he's got that they can't do anything about, besides him in the Constitution, is who gets to call the special session, right? So it's not terribly shocking. It's like, oh, we checked off the list. We're down to, I guess we have to look at this one last thing that the governor gets to do that we can't control. And I don't know. It's offensive to me on a lot of levels, but mostly just in keeping with 100% what they have been doing under Governor Beshear for sure. I don't know, Jeni, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have spent some time in Frankfurt, and I don't necessarily want them spending any more time in Frankfurt. They're kind of like my kittens back here. When they have too much time on their hands, it just gets worse. So when you are there, they take like enormous amounts of time to eat cake together. It's really quite ridiculous how poor time management is when you are in Frankfurt. So yeah, I don't know that they need more time to do very little for the people of Kentucky.
Yeah, really. I mean, if you've paid attention, they are 100% deadline driven, right? It's like the last possible moment to do something before it has to be done. That's when it happens. So giving them more time, it does not mean there's going to be more transparency. It doesn't mean there's going to be more, engagement or accountability or opportunity for the public to understand what's going on. Right? They never notice. Never notice their hearings when they should. They never notice bills when they should. They kind of, I don't think it's a useful thing.
I think it's terribly strange too. It allegedly is the party of small government, and here they are wanting more government. And that baffles me. So I don't understand. And I'm absolute no on that, and I hope many other people are as well.
For sure. All right, so we're going to move into our next story, which is about Amendment 2. So that was about Amendment 1. Story number 2 is about Amendment 2. So for that story, we're very excited to bring to the show Kelsey Hayes Coots, the field director for Protect Kentucky Access. Of course, Amendment 2 has been, something we've talked a lot about, something that a lot of groups are engaged in. But Protect Kentucky Access is kind of the big tent effort to make sure that we say no to Amendment 2. So Kelsey, thanks so much for joining us. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to come talk about this. I appreciate you saying how Protect Kentucky Access is like the umbrella group. One of my favorite quotes is, the stronger the coalition, the greater the victory. The more inclusive the coalition, the greater the victory. And if you want to bring a fight, you bring people together. And so that's exactly what Protect Kentucky Access has done, being that it is an organization solely formed to defeat Amendment 2. And it is made up of many other organizations that your viewers have probably heard of. That's, the board of the org. And so for me, it seems like that's what we're doing. And we got 13 days left.
Yeah. And how is it going?
How's it going? I feel great. Really, honestly, but we're not letting up. What I am so inspired by is, of course, my position is as the organizing director, get to see people every week come to our canvases or come to our phone banks, and they're saying, look, I've never been politically active before. I've never knocked on a door. I've never called a voter. This is not a thing that I do, but this is that important to me. And we're seeing intergenerational groups of people come and take action. And I will give you a stat, actually, that we figured out this morning. We have supporter IDs from 116 of 120 counties. And we've had people from 99 of our 120 counties take action with us. And so I think because we don't have offices, a lot of this is virtual and we communicate on Google Meets and things like that. It can feel isolated or you haven't, it's hard to grasp, like, how big is this thing actually, right? But it's statewide and we have people stepping up. What do people always say, from Paducah to Pikeville? I would say that is, that's accurate. And so that's just been exciting to see, especially as sort of, I feel like the collective electorate and just the general population who doesn't do this, and follow this like we all do, is really cluing in to like, oh, early voting is about to happen. I have to start thinking about this. We're seeing even more sort of capacity come our way in our, volunteer shifts and things like that are going like this, which is really, really exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then, so, obviously the most important thing is that we win, but what kind of impact are you seeing, on the overall kind of engagement? Do you have any sense of, like, is this, spiking turnout? Do you think, is this something that, more people are paying attention to than they would have otherwise in the midterm election, or what's your sense of that?
Yeah. I think that a couple things, it's a little easier, I'd say, to get people to show up to vote for an issue than it is for a politician, because people think either A, my vote doesn't matter, or oh, politicians aren't, they're not going to do anything anyway. Politicians aren't very popular in Kentucky. And so we're finding that it is easier to motivate folks, it feels like they understand that this is like a straight up yes or no, and the stakes. And of course, that is what we highlight in all of our canvassing scripts and all of that. We're not getting super into the weeds. It's the stakes of this are, will have reverberate for generations, right? And that's how important this is. And people, whether they're in the voting booth every single time that they're able, or they haven't voted in the last 5 years, we're finding that people are motivated to come out. And then, like I said before, they're motivated to talk to their friends about this, because it's not a partisan issue, right? People are affected by this, whether they're a Democrat or Republican. And we have many folks across the state who realize that. And again, that's really exciting to see. Like, Kentuckians do not want politicians in their medical decisions. They know that this is too extreme. And what I always say is the coalition of people that are going to vote no is very large. There could be people who consider themselves reproductive rights activists, and they follow this and they do this stuff all the time. There could also be people who would identify as pro-life. And I don't necessarily like to use those terms because I think that plays into a narrative that is not productive. However, but even those folks, what we're hearing at the doors is people will say, I have complicated feelings about abortion. And they'll say, but you're telling me that this doesn't have any exceptions. And it's, no, it doesn't. It says nothing in the ballot language says nothing in this Constitution shall secure a right to abortion, right? And people who vote yes are saying that they want that language in there, and people who vote no are saying that they don't want that language in there. And for me, that's clear cut. And opponents may try to make it about other things. It's not about anything else but that. It's, do you want that language in the Constitution or not? And then, so not only what does that mean right now, and just based off that language, but what could that mean later on if we get even more politicians that want to be in there and make it even more extreme? And we're finding, again, not a partisan issue. People are understanding that all over the political spectrum.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so what do you need? Like how should people be engaging right now in this kind of final almost 2 weeks or just under 2 weeks? What do you want people to do?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. As the organizing director, of course, we want volunteer shifts. And what that means is the most important thing that you can do in an election for any candidate, but also in this specifically, is to talk to your friends and neighbors, or do what we like to call direct voter contact. What that means is that's canvassing in your neighborhood, phone banking, or we have what's called digital organizing, which is, again, you talking to your friends and neighbors, and we show you how to be in touch with the campaign about that. That's probably the easiest way to get involved. But those conversations matter because the ballot language is confusing. And so you may be thinking, oh, everybody that I know votes. Right. They may vote, but then they may go read Amendment 2 and go, I don't know what I think because this is confusing. Right. And they skip it. So it's up to us whether we are super engaged and think about this all the time or not. We have to have intentional conversations with our friends and family first. And then if you have 30 minutes between now and November 8th or 6 p.m. on November 8th, which is when the polls close, we would love to have you with us. And so just to recap, and what's on the screen, facebook.com/Protect Kentucky is our Facebook page. We also have mobilize.us/Protect Kentucky Access. That is a link to all of our volunteer opportunities. Again, we have canvassing 7 days a week in Lexington and Louisville. We also have what we call distributed canvassing. We do have folks canvassing in other communities, and some more regularly than others, but we do, if you want to canvass in your community, we'll mail you the materials and get you set up. We also have virtual phone banks happening that you can log in from home. You'll be connected just like this virtually, get trained to do that. And then, like I said, the digital organizing, which you also can do from home. And so again, we have stuff no matter what county you live in, 7 days a week. If you've got 30 minutes, we would love to have you.
Y'all got 30 minutes, right? Everyone's got 30 minutes.
Right.
You know, like who doesn't have 30 minutes? Awesome. Well, that's wonderful. And I told you it would be a quick interview, so I hate to be a liar. So I'm going to let you go. And I want to just let you get back to the campaign and wish you all the luck and all the best and all the, I know you guys have like an amazing team, the woman who actually ran the campaign in Kansas, right, is now helping run the campaign here in Kentucky. That gives me some hope for sure. And yeah, just really awesome to see the engagement. Jeni, Doug, any like quick things you want to say?
I am thankful and thrilled that Kelsey Hayes Coots is on this case because she's amazing.
Kudos to
Love you
Coots.
too, Jeni.
I think they're in Coots. I think go, Doug.
I just said thank you. Appreciate all your hard work, and we're going to win this.
We are going to win this. We
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks. Get back to it. All right. So now we're going to move into the sad saga of Senate District 12. So this is I think the whole, the cursed gerrymandering, right? That's what we want to talk a little bit about, because gerrymandering is something that I feel like there was attention paid to it at some point, right? If folks remember, we had like a conversation about the congressional maps and how outrageous those were. If you're looking at the image right now, they did everything. Look at that. Like that first district is the most amazing and just offensive. What crazy person wrote that? Like, oh yeah, that's how we should build a district. It should go from the capital to Paducah. I think you could drive through 1, 2, 3 other districts and another state to get to the other side of that district. Like, that is just mind-boggling that somebody thought that was a good idea, right? So that was the kind of, District 1 is, now just as Republican basically as it was. It's like still like there's no way a Democrat can win District 1 in the current world. But they also made District 6 less, kind of less purple if you squint, right? So, really unfortunate for a lot of us folks in Kentucky, or in Lexington rather, who think, why can't my views ever be represented in Congress, right? Why do, it just got way less likely, which is unfortunate. But that's just the congressional districts, right? Just those 6 districts. Then if you look at the state house maps, then if you look at the Senate maps, they all got gerrymandered as well. And one of those stories that we wanted to just touch base on was Senate District 12, right? So this, so Senate District 12 had been held by Alice Forgy Kerr since 1999, Republican. Kind of long line of bluegrass Republicans, decided to retire last year after she was almost knocked off by a grassroots campaign by teacher and educator Paula Setser-Kissick, who lost by about 700 votes, maybe out of 53,000 cast in 2018. Apparently, this district really likes people with 2 last names. Also in 2018, the only Trump midterm, that was a good year for Democrats generally, even in Kentucky. So Paula did a lot of great things, had a great story to tell in the year after Matt Bevin did everything in his power to disparage and disrespect teachers. Paula was an educator with a great network of teachers kind of lined up behind her, coordinated with House District 88 representative who had an awesome grassroots network as well, which led to an incredibly close victory in 2018. 40-ish votes, I think, helped Sherilyn Stevenson flip her district. But after the dust settled, Paula came up a bit short, but immediately set her sights on 2022. And unfortunately, redistricting interrupted her plans. So do folks know the term cracking and packing? So those are the hallmarks of a partisan gerrymander, right? So take a fairly blue area like Fayette County. 2018, there were 2 Senate districts completely within Fayette, Lexington. Senate District 13, represented by Reggie Thomas, and Senate District 12, which we just discussed. There were 3 other districts that claimed big chunks of Fayette, but snaked off to Clark County, Madison County, or Jessamine County, right? So 2 districts completely in Fayette, and then 3 that took some parts of Fayette. After the 2020 redistricting, the GOP packed Reggie's Senate District 13 as much as possible, so concentrating these strong Democratic precincts into 1 Senate district, while slicing the rest of Fayette into 6 other districts. So diluting the power of Lexington suburbs by adding those voices into the overwhelming red rural counties that were paired up to. So right now we've got all these conservative, rural-ish lawmakers who currently claim part of Fayette County. So again, if you live in that part of Fayette County, sucks to be you, because you've got some guy that you probably don't agree with at all, quote unquote, representing you, diluting the power of your voice and your vote. So prior to redistricting, Senate District 12 had a little over 103,000 Fayette County voters. Now it has about 38,000, coupled with 23,000+ Boyle County, 22,000 plus Woodford County, and almost 20,000 Mercer County, right? So, it's the biggest chunk, but you add in those 3 rural counties, and it definitely makes it way more challenging. So now that's the kind of the backstory, I guess, to some degree. But now joining us is Paula Setser-Kissick. So Paula, who we just mentioned, really did amazing work. Ran a great grassroots campaign, widely acknowledged to be just, really doing a wonderful job. And the best thing about Paula, I think, is that, despite losing, was like, let's do it again. I think I can do better next time. And, which I think is really an important lesson. That's like me on my soapbox in the middle of being on my soapbox. I think the idea that you can run again and do better is a great lesson. And as we look at the landscape, there are, I think people need to learn that, right? So anyway, Paula, thanks for taking some time. Thank you for, your commitment to our Commonwealth, your commitment to, being engaged, being active, and, that kind of showing that value of civic engagement. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So what's your, kind of your perspective on it? Like, how do you view kind of what went down with you and in this kind of the redistricting process?
It's interesting because if you look at it, they obviously could have left Fayette County, the 2 Senate districts that were self-contained, and it wouldn't have changed anything about Republican power by far. And we know that. And if you also look at Louisville, from what I've looked at and from what I've asked people, they didn't really drastically mess with the Senate districts there. So I do believe in our case that the reason why it wasn't left in Fayette County is they knew for a fact we were going to win, and we weren't just going to win against their preferred candidate. It was pretty much going to be a rout. And so they had to do something about it. I think if you add on to that too, if you look at the districts, whether it's House or really not Senate so much, but if you look at House or me, it's a lot of the Democratic women that seem to suffer the biggest hits, if you will, in the redistricting process. And I think that's really interesting. And of course, they're looking 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and they want to make sure they keep Fayette County diluted. But once again, I think it's interesting they chose not to do it to the Senate districts in Louisville, Jefferson County.
Yeah. What's your take? Why do you think that happened? Like, what is it that you specifically got under their kind of under their skin, or what's your read on that?
Like I said, after looking at who they chose to go after in the redistricting, the fact that Louisville and Jefferson County were left alone in the Senate, and it's Democratic women across the board. And then in Fayette, itself, you could have left it alone. But we came out of the gate. First of all, they knew how we did before in 2018. We came out of the gate strong, and actually not only strong in 2022, but stronger, or 2021, technically. Stronger because, let's face it, first time around, nobody thought I had a chance against a 20-year candidate. People weren't really eager to give me money. They thought it couldn't be won. When you come back as a candidate who only lost by 700 and some votes, people feel a little differently about you. And so we came out very strong, and we were only going to be stronger. And of course, I already had a massive campaign team in place and volunteers. We already, and Representative Stevenson, if they had left the district mostly alone and we were still overlapping, assuming the if, which didn't happen, then we already had made plans. We're planners, and we are all about the strategy and so forth. And so I think they knew they couldn't touch us. I think it's interesting too, and I don't know how you all feel about this, and you may have thoughts, but they did have somebody they preferred. The Republicans did as their candidate, but they even redistricted out her opponents. And so I think they were worried about the strength if their candidate had to go up against others. Not just me.
Right. Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit about that, right? Or looked at that a little bit. Like Andrew Cooper-Ryder, I think, was one of these. What do they call themselves in Kentucky? Are they the Freedom? What are they?
Is he part of the Libertarian group, or
I'm
not sure. I mean, obviously he's registered Republican, but part of a different segment.
Do you recall what are those?
I'm not sure.
No. All right. We'll look it up. We'll find Liberty. Yeah, I think it is the Liberty. Okay. A word that we all like until they grab it. Yeah. So, but Cooper-Ryder clearly is not favored by the folks redrawing maps, right? He's kind of an outlier within their club of distributing power amongst themselves and taking away from the governor. I'm sure no one wanted Cooper-Ryder in that conversation, right? So I can see. Exactly.
It's just interesting they chose, instead of being like, we're going to let this play out a little bit. They didn't.
Yeah, no. If they can clear the decks, right, on their side, as well as take away, a candidate with a head of steam, and I know that it's just a tough call, right? Because it's not like you were talking to these Republicans who are in charge of redistricting to say, hey guys, I'd really like to launch my campaign. So could you figure out the maps? Right. But they, at a certain point, you just kind of had to go, right? You're like, I gotta start doing what I'm going to do.
Well, yeah, I think we announced at the end of August, and their candidates had kind of announced over the summer, I guess. I to be honest, you said I set my sights right away in 2022. I actually did not know if I was going to do it again. I just wasn't sure. But
thank you for correcting me. We do like to be kernels of truth. I just,
there's my kernel of truth right there. For me, a lot of it was dependent on my team. And so I asked him, I'm like, hey, people are asking me, they're wanting to know what we want to do. And I said, do you have it in you again? Because I'm not doing it by myself. If you're not on board, it's a team effort. And they were like, you know what? We're not done. and we all felt we still had a story to tell and a job to do. And unfortunately, we got sidetracked.
Well, I do know that you are like still engaged. You're you're working hard, or at least your social media makes it look like you are. I don't know how many doors you've done, but
It's all fake. No, I am heavily involved with Representative Sherilyn Stevenson's campaign. Obviously, as you said, she and I worked together. We met in 2018. We didn't know each other, but it turned out that a lot of the crew that have been working with her in her primary, because I didn't have a primary, I actually knew a fair amount of those folks. And so it sort of just began kind of coming together, and our districts overlapped. And we're all about working smarter, not harder. And we were all like, how do you make this work? And we were actually told by, folks in the local party that they'd never, ever seen local candidates on their own decide to collaborate and, tackle it that way. And to me, to both of us, it just made sense. Mm-hmm. So obviously, whenever I got, put on the sidelines, I have a huge commitment to her. She's a personal friend, and I believe in the work she does. And so, hey, it's a good for, I'm going to start a hashtag rage canvassing. So there you go. I'm out there knocking doors, rage canvassing.
Well, as somebody who is in Sherilyn's district, thank you very much for that help. Because I feel like then I feel a little less guilty that I don't do as many doors. But no, I'm going to do more. I promise I'll do more. But it is, I think, we got to get her back there for sure. And they didn't do her any favors in their redistricting. They were not looking to help her, make her life easier, right? For sure.
No, so. She was another. I mean, once again, you look at the House campaigns. Yes, she may not have been gerrymandered out, but she basically was. I mean, you look at the little leg that comes down and grabs her house and what they gave her. It was a deliberate target. We all know it. And, when you do things like that, then I'm going to do something about it. And so I'm knocking doors.
That's awesome. Well, Jeni, I know you've paid attention to this. Do you have any questions for Paula or just observations that you want to make?
I mean, I just have to say once again, I had no idea when I agreed to do this tonight that you were going to have two of my favorite women in Kentucky on the show. I mean, I've already expressed my adoration for Kelsey Hayes Coots, and now you're here with me, presented me with Paula, and she's amazing. I think the Kentucky GOP are a bunch of cowards. Frankly, I am honored to have been a part of Sherilyn's team and Paula's team and knocked doors for both of them. And I was ready to do it again this year for Paula. And I think they're cowards.
I think it's also, and it's something to consider that the volunteers, the biggest base of our volunteers on either team are educators. Mm-hmm. And so is there an additional, I'll never know, but is there an additional slap in the face? And with what was done to Sherilyn as well, is there something extra going on? Is there something that's crossed my mind before?
I think the GOP supermajority does not like, strong women stepping up and getting engaged. I'll be honest. That's my read on it, at least. Yes. It seems like, whether they're in the legislature or not, or, just volunteering. But no, it does seem like this is clearly the GOP supermajority has no use for public education, has no use for public educators, whether it's charter schools or making sure that they didn't give you guys, a pay raise, right? Or making sure, it's just very clear that they would prefer, not to support public education, and did as kind of as little as they could, really, even though historic amounts of money coming in, kind of free money from the feds, which was earmarked for, those types of investments. They still wouldn't go along with it because they're jerks. Because we got to get rid of them. I don't know. Come on, people. Come on, Kentucky. Wake up.
You want to shake people and be like, yes, wake up.
Are you not paying attention? I know you're not paying attention, because why in the world would you? It's very disturbing. But please. All right, Doug, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have an observation. I have a question. We've had several candidates on here, and it amazes me that I know all of those candidates are working very hard in their areas, but then, like you talked about, going out and helping other candidates, they're doing the same thing, traveling to Western Kentucky from Central Kentucky to go down and help do some canvassing. I think that's amazing. And the question I want to ask you, have you thought about moving across town?
I have actually been asked that several times by people. And I think a lot of people that were hopeful, no. I think even before the housing market became insane in Fayette County, I think I'd lose my mind if I tried to buy a house now.
You don't have to
No,
move very
and my
far.
house.
If you looked at, I mean, you've looked at the map, obviously. Like it's, you know,
I've got all kinds of room to play in, don't I? It's
We're
an
talking
interesting,
for
you
you.
know, that's a really interesting district. And you're right. Fayette County is very much a very really and truly, when you look at the overall, really becomes this, you know, very much a minority in the overall numbers and all. But you do have Boyle as far as you've got Danville, you've got Versailles that could, you know, trend on the Democratic Republican. I actually think that, you know, their candidate, you know, she's from Lexington and she lives here. And if they mount, for one thing, if a strong Republican, wealthy Republican, and one of those other rural counties decides to run, their argument could be against her. You know, we don't want somebody from Lexington telling us what to do from the big city. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and I can tell you right now that people don't like having their legislators in the city or being represented. I mean, it's just a fact. So in some ways, you know, I'm not even getting the Democrat at that point. I'm just saying, even in the Republican Party, it could become an interesting situation. For a Democrat, it's going to be harder, but there are some pockets that potentially, you know, can be worked in those areas and might pay off for somebody. But Mercer's a hard county. I don't think
I'm from Mercer, so that is an excellent. You said it exactly correctly. Mercer is a hard county. Yes.
my mom's in Johnson County. She called me the other day and said, I got my absentee ballot. There are only 2 races that have a Democratic component on the entire ballot. And I had her take a picture and send it to me. And that is correct. I mean, it's blank, 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 blank for Democrat.
it is, you know, it is hard to recruit for a suicide mission. You know, I think the idea that, and I pay too much attention to Twitter. I'll be honest, but you know, there's been some like high level trolling happening from the Lexington Herald's political, feed on Twitter, you know, calling out Democrats for, you know, it's a Democrats' fault because they, you know, Jeff Young is on the ballot, right? It's our fault that, you know, and it's Democrats' fault. There's not enough, you know, Democrats contesting every single race, right? Like, well, you know, there have been cultural shifts here. Kentucky today is not the Kentucky of 20 years ago that was a single party state. And I've done a lot of calling and canvassing of Democrats while I'm out, you know, in some rural counties. And you know what? Like, they're not Democrats. They have just not gotten around to changing their, you know, their party registration.
They're faux Democrats.
They would rather, you know, spit on Nancy Pelosi, you know, than, you know, I think vote for a Democrat. Right. So this cultural thing has changed us. It's not the, you know, historic party. It's a different thing. And Fox News is, I think, really, you know, just, you asked about the policies. I think generally a lot of them would still be with us. You know, they know that the Republicans aren't going to like ever raise the minimum wage. And, you know, the Republicans that we've seen, you know, their priority of the past session, like we're going to cut social safety net programs as much as we possibly can. We're going to do everything in our power to like give rich people like more tax breaks, right? Like, so the policies, again, I think that, you know, the everyday folks should be with the Democrats, but there's just got a brand problem right now. And I think that, you know, it's not going to be fixed anytime soon. So at any rate, that's again soapbox within a soapbox. So let me step down and give Doug space to say anything additional, or Jeni, any thoughts that you want to share?
Jeni, go ahead.
I just want to say, I think once again, it's a real shame that the cowards took away the opportunity you had to have you as a senator. I think that I think we all would have benefited from that. And so I guess like,
well, Jeni, you know, I live to strike fear in the heart of others. And I feel like I've sort of met that mission.
Clearly. You were clearly terrifying.
I think you could consider it a badge of honor.
I do. Our team, you know, because, you know, it's funny. I honestly feel like it's a team effort. I think Jeni can attest to that, because me by myself out there floating in the wind would have done nothing. It was a group effort. And if we had made it to Frankfurt, I used to joke with them and say, you know, it's all of us going to Frankfurt, and I'll have, you know, drinks in the fridge and so forth when you come down, because they were going to get everybody. But, you know, these things happen, and you move on with your life. And in my case, you rage canvas. So,
All right, Lisa Harmon, Baradarin. I'm sorry, Lisa, that I've just mangled your last name. People need to quit saying this won't happen in Kentucky. It is happening right now. I'm not sure which thing isn't going to happen. Maybe me saying that it's hard to, elect a Democrat in some parts of our state. Maybe that's the thing that you took offense to. And I will watch the results and we will see what happens. But I am very hopeful that I am completely wrong. But we'll see.
it'd be great if we were all wrong about what we're afraid we might see.
That's right. So with that happy intro, we're gonna say thank you, Paula, so much for joining us, and thanks for your rage canvassing. And let's get let's get Sherilyn back there for sure. And then we're gonna bring on Bill O'Brien for the campaign corner. Really excited because we've gone through a number of candidates who are running hard, even if it's challenging, are out there sharing their vision of where our Commonwealth needs to go. And Bill stepped up, Paula stepped off, because she had registered for the race, but obviously couldn't run because she wasn't in the district anymore, but still had to withdraw so that there could be somebody like raising their hand and throwing their hat in the ring. And so Bill O'Brien answered the call. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Aaron.
Awesome. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was it that kind of like motivated you to get involved? Like, what's your backstory about kind of like the idea of civic engagement?
So true. So I'm happy to be there. I had a long discussion with Paula. I actually offered to rent a room in my house to Paula to get her to move to stay in the district. So I couldn't get her to do that. But it was great. So I'm happy to do this, and I get involved for a lot of reasons. I've been doing politics and public service work for 30 years, and it interests me. I've worked in Frankfurt actually for the state legislature as the chief human resources officer for a while, so I'm familiar with Frankfurt and what's going on there. And honestly, I thought somebody needed to step up, and I'm very happy to step up. I refuse to cede this one to the Republicans. I mean, they're looking for a fight. I'm happy to give them a fight. Paula's run for all the right reasons, and I'm happy to pick up her mantle and go forward. I've been talking about three things, and I have been all over the district. I've been to Mercer, Boyle, Woodford, and all of Fayette County, especially my part. I was just down in Mercer and Boyle last week, and they're excited to actually have a candidate come down and talk to them because I'm the only one who's been doing it. So it's great to be there. I've been talking about three things that really matter in our district. And the first is obviously protecting women's rights and privacy and their healthcare choices. And I'm a big vote no on ballot number 2 and 1 for that reason. But it's not about, to me, it's not about abortion. It's about your personal individual privacy rights. And I'm a firm believer that the Constitution covers your individual right to privacy. I've been studying the Constitution for 40 years as my background, and there's no doubt in my mind that that's wrong. And it would take, Justice Alito 79 pages to explain an opinion. There's something wrong with that. No Supreme Court opinion goes that long. The second thing I'm talking about is growing our economy, good jobs, and safe communities. Inflation is really tough right now. It is. But what's worse is if you don't have a good job. And so the most important thing we can do for Kentucky is grow our economy, go for good jobs, improve our community, make the community safer to live, work and raise a family. And the third thing, and this kind of buttresses together, is growing our democracy, defending our democracy rather. And that's resonated really well with people. My first job out of college was working on Capitol Hill. I used to brown bag my lunch and sit in the rotunda every day. And it's a beautiful place. And I was just disgusted on January 6th. And I just said to myself, it's got to end. It's absolutely got to end. I've seen how legislators operate in Frankfurt. I've been around legislators for a long time. This is just a gross power grab by the Republicans, and I'm not going to put up with it. And if I lose the race, I lose the race, but I'm in it to win it. I am all in this race. I'm not going to endorse talking to people in all 4 counties. We're working hard. We're working the phones. We're working all kinds of communications, and we're going to do that. And the Republicans just ought to be embarrassed. And frankly, in my view, and I'll just go out there, if you're still a registered Republican right now and you're not standing up to your own party, then you have no guts. You have no courage. You ought to just step aside and get out of the race. you're just embarrassed to be there. And many people who are good, decent Republicans who have their own view on things have left the party, and I'm proud of them for that. So I'm happy to be there and happy to be all in for this district and working hard. And Aaron, I hope I answered your question. I offered Paula that room, but she declined me down on it, and hoping to get Jeni's vote because she's in my district.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you laid him with I'll go on a bit for it. You laid him with an interesting thing. The thing that ticks me off, and I've been around redistricting for a while too. So these districts swing, and I ran some numbers before we came in the show, from 112,000 in the Senate to 124,000 in the districts, and that's a 10% swing. Now, you tell me how that is decent representation of people. Congressional districts literally are 0.001%, 1/1000th of a percent. I've seen districts that are different by 5 people, 7 people, 10 people. How is it possible that you can have a district that's different by 12,000 people? How is it possible that you can take Senate District 12, take the city of Lexington, Fayette County, which is about 330,000 people, and not have at least 2 Senate seats out of there? The Republicans divided Fayette County into 7 seats. 7. Reggie Thomas is in the heart of the district, and there are 6 seats all around that. Tell me how that makes sense, how that passes the smell test. It just doesn't. And I could go on and on and on about this, but I'm decent. So you're obviously going to want to know, a little bit about me. I'm a husband, a father, I've been a basketball coach, a scout leader, involved in our communities, volunteered for flood relief in different parts of the state. I've worked with unions for a long time, defending workers, been a manager and a senior executive for a long time, working through companies, working through public sector people, helping to grow that. So I bring a lot of talent and a lot of experience to this, and I'm passionate about representing those 4 counties, all in Frankfort, starting in January.
That's awesome. Well, Bill, I do appreciate the passion you're clearly bringing to the kind of these issues. I concur with you. Anyone who is like a registered Republican right now, after all that has happened and all that they've just exposed as their from January 6th on to how they behaved in Frankfurt, it's just it's astounding, really, that there are people of good conscience who are like, yep, this is my party. So I concur 100% with you on that one. We have a few important issues. You've answered one clearly on Amendment 2 and the idea of the right to privacy, and so that's really an important one for us here at Progress Kentucky. Another one that's really important is making sure that folks are pro public education, because again, as I laid out, the Republicans in Frankfurt are clearly not. And so that's what we like to make sure that any candidate we bring on here, we ask that question: where do you come down on public education?
Yeah, I'm hugely in favor of public education. I mean, my graduate degrees are from public universities. My kids are products of public schools. Public education is important, and people throw that around. And let me just talk to the non-progressives for a second. If
they don't watch the show, just to be clear,
if you're building a business, if you're looking for talent, and I've recruited hundreds and hundreds of people for jobs. You want good, well-educated, well-rounded people for your business. And that's the conservative side. And I've talked to employers who are frustrated that they can't find them. And that's a direct result of your public education. So that's the reason, if you're a Republican or if you're conservative, to do that. If you're a progressive, like I am, public education is fundamental to our democracy. It's fundamental to citizens being able to participate in the democracy, understand what's going on, vote well and intentionally, and drive the future of this country. Every generation turns this country over to the next one and says, it's your charge now, you're responsible. If we don't have a well-educated public, we can't do that. It's not always about getting jobs. It's about, this civic commonwealth, which is a lofty idea. But we're a commonwealth, not a state, for a reason. We're here to create a public that's educated and well informed to drive Kentucky forward and move it to the next generation, so that in fact we do leave it better for our kids than we found it for ourselves.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, so the charter school movement, the kind of stuff that we're seeing right now out of Frankfurt, really, we need people who can strongly stand up to those folks and expose what's going on. And I think, they've definitely shown that there's a money interest in there. There's a profit margin or profit motive that is gross to watch it kind of play out. Then the final of our kind of 3 litmus test, I don't know, would be, where are you on Andy Bashir? Will you support Andy Bashir in his efforts to move our Commonwealth forward?
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you, I've had a couple of pieces of my stump speech, and I go out and say, this is going to sound like the Andy Bashir show, and he's a great guy, and it is. But let me tell you about this. I've watched Andy Bashir for 7 years, and he has stood up for power, against power all the time, and people rawly taking power. I'm very proud of that. And I think he needs somebody to have his back in Frankfurt. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. This is a man who walked into the governorship, but probably had a whole slew of things on his plate ready to do. Walked into the middle of COVID and has worked on that very well. Turned around and had a tornado in Western Kentucky, happened to be in the city where his dad was born. Turned around and had a flood in Eastern Kentucky, and is dealing with that. He's doing a great job. And this is my favorite story, the Andy Bashir story, which is I worked for a couple of governors and a lot of senators. They always get calls from the president who says, "Hey, listen, you've had a disaster. I'm ready to come down. I'm ready to come. Just let me know what you need." Andy Bashir reached into, and no other governor I've seen do this, reached into his pocket and said, "Well, Mr. President, as a matter of fact, I have 3 things right here that I need some help." And he goes, 1, 2, and 3. And I watched President Biden's face when Governor Bashir told that story. And he just shook his head and said, "Yeah, that's exactly what happened." And I could read that face because I know that face from working in Washington. And he's seeing all over him. Nobody else has ever done that. But so this is a governor who is all in for being a governor, who is all about the people in this state. He is not about the power in this state, and is looking to take care of them. And he treats the people in the state like he treats his own family. And for somebody like that, I think somebody needs to have his back and help fight for him in Frankfurt. And that's why I'm running for U.S. Senate, state Senate, among other reasons.
That's awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for, again, your kind of commitment to our civic life and making sure that this Commonwealth moves forward. Jeni or Doug, any kind of final questions or thoughts you want to share with Bill?
I'm a new, recent to the Gardenside area, so I am your constituent, or hopefully to be your constituent. I'm new here, but I'll be excited to vote for you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope to earn your vote, not just ask for it, but I want to earn everybody's vote. And that's what I say when I talk to people.
We hope to see you in the state Senate, and we'll come visit you.
Absolutely. We'll be open if I'm there. We just 13 days to get this done, and then we'll see everybody after January 1st in Frankfurt.
That's awesome. All right. Well, good luck, Bill. I hope that you're getting your message out to folks, and I feel your passion. I feel your kind of principle, and you're exactly the type of person we desperately need up in Frankfurt for sure. All right. So now we're gonna close out the show. I'm going to throw over to my friend Doug to give us a few kind of action items moving forward. And then, thanks, Doug. Oh, and let me just say thank you, Jeni, for pinch hitting and jumping in. And you did a wonderful job. And we appreciate the view of a working teacher, right? We talk a lot about education. We talk every show it comes up. We're very focused on fighting for teachers, but it's always best when we can hear from you directly.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate your help and we appreciate your fight. It's obviously an uphill battle on all fronts. And so it's nice to have good company along the way.
All right, Doug, take it away.
Thanks for joining. All right, Jeni, thanks for joining us. You're welcome anytime. We'd love for you to join Election Central. Go to Forward Kentucky and learn about the races and the donors and get the information you need to be an effective advocate over the next 13 days. November 8th is coming up, including links to interviews with candidates on both Kernels of Truth and my Old Kentucky podcast. Thanks to Forward Kentucky for building this resource. It's an amazing website, has a lot of information. The most important thing you can do for this month, I want to go over the people that we have interviewed in our campaign corner or had on the show during the election time. Jimmy Alsbrooks, Hank Linderman, Morgan McGarvey, Matthew Lehman, Connor Hoblib, Brandy Cravens, Grayson Vandergrift, Megan Brannon, Thomas Adams, Pamela Stevenson, Lamine Swan, Chuck Eddy, Susan Sintra, Elaine Wilson Reedy, Dr. Brittany Hernandez Stevenson, Martina Jackson, Pam Dossett, Bianca Crockham, Dustin Burley, Derek Graham, Shirley Stevenson, Buddy Wheatley, Kelly Jones, and tonight, Bill O'Brien. Pick a candidate. Is your state lawmaker in a tight re-election campaign, or do you want to get rid of your current state rep or senator? Pick a campaign and do all you can. We're in the closing 2 weeks. Every hour you can commit matters. As Kelsey mentioned, 30 minutes, whatever you can give. You can also jump on the No on 2 campaign, canvassing, calling, digital organizing. It's all very incredibly valuable right now. We're back next week with our final pre-election show. We'll be back on, I guess it would be November the 2nd. That sound right? Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State, organized as a 501c4. We're affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, commonly known as CAVE. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, and increase voter turnout and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Production this evening was by the one and only NATO. Thanks, Kit, for loaning him to us for this evening. And thank you, Nate, for the theme songs. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook, don't worry. You can rewatch shows and see our source links on Facebook, also on Forward Kentucky. Or audio podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Logo and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. We'll see you next week.